Hey, hello, welcome back. I'm Sonia and I'm here with Mandi Rae from Astrological Astrology. She's doing her first Astro Weekly update with me. So welcome, Mandi Rae.
Hello, it's so good to be here.
And you can find Mandi Rae at astrological.com and you can find me at celestiaastrology.com. And today we're covering the 29th of January to the 5th of February. So we're going to introduce you to the astrology of this week. And here I've got the astrology of the month. If you want to take a screenshot, and you can follow us week by week and see as we move through this month everything that's happening. But I feel like we've got a calmer month before we move into the spring that's going to be a bit more dynamic. But yeah, so we're going to be covering from the 1st here through to the 5th. A little bit happening and it's ending with that nice Jupiter direct.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, we always like it, benefics direct, gathering a bit more speed and energy. So here we've got the overview as a month, and it was like Krista said once, it's like these planets are reigning in this part of your chart. So they're watering it and giving it strength and energy. And we can't see the sun or the moon, and that's because we kind of know where they are. The sun is currently in Aquarius and will be traveling into Pisces at this time. So we can see that there's a combination of all the planets. Even if you don't know exactly where everything is at the moment, you can see that everything's on this side of the chart. It's all building up in this area. So there's this focus at the moment, Aquarius, and everything moving into Pisces, getting ready to move into Aries in the spring. And the moon completes the full cycle of the zodiac as well. So Mercury is moving through Aquarius, and it will be cazimi with the sun that's also in Aquarius during that time. And we can see that Mercury is moving the fastest of all of them. I don't know if it quite meets Venus, but Venus will have moved on by the time it gets there. But it will be joining into Pisces. I think Venus will be on the move by that time.
I think it might join Venus and Aries, maybe because they both go retrograde.
Yeah, they're both going retrograde from Aries back to Pisces at this, over those same degrees as well, which is quite intense. I've not seen that before as an astrologer. I don't know if you have, Mandi.
Yeah, I think maybe there was a similar thing happening, and I want to say it was 2017. I'll have to do my research on that, but it's a good thing to look at. So I'll make sure I know that by the time we get to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's not happening until mid-March. So
mid-March, yeah.
Yeah, next month.
It's worth knowing with the shadow, though, which we do have Venus getting to the shadow eventually. So, here we go.
Yeah, and also with Mercury, this affects the fixed signs. So we like to tell you who might expect to see the changes or who might be feeling. I mean, I've been having some Mercury-related problems, which might be Mercury gearing up. It feels like a Mercury retrograde for me, which might be because my Mercury's in Leo. So I've got like this opposition going on. So these fixed signs might be feeling Mercury's movements, and also Taurus and Scorpio. So you've got Aquarius, Taurus and Scorpio. And then when it goes into Pisces, it's more of the mutable signs that feel it. So you've got Pisces, Gemini, Virgo and Sagittarius that feel it.
Venus, and this is kind of what I was talking about. You can see Venus is starting here at late Pisces, which means it's in the shadow of its retrograde already. So whenever a planet moves forward, stations, and goes backwards, obviously it's retracing its steps. So it will be doing that, moving its first part of the way through until it stations retrograde. So all the way up to, what is that? It's 9 degrees, I believe, 10 degrees of Aries. So late Pisces through the first decan of Aries is where Venus will be traveling. Pay attention, I would say, especially if you're mutable or cardinal, because it will affect those types of signs the most. So we're talking Gemini, Virgo, Sag, and Pisces, or Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. A large part of the zodiac. Everyone this month will be having something fixed, mutable. I mean, everyone. So
we were just saying before we started about Mars is still retrograde in Cancer, and it looks like it's moving very slowly, which is what happens with the retrograde. The planets are practically stationary in the sky, and it's just because of the primary movement of the other planets. It's not actually moving backwards, but the other planets are moving forward. So it's like when you're in a train situation and there's a neighbouring train by you and one starts moving and you can't always figure out whether it's you or the other train that's moving. So it's that kind of sensation. But Mars is kind of still and the other planets are moving forward around it. So it's giving that sensation of it moving backwards. And of course it does travel backwards across the degrees as the rest of the chart is moving forwards. So it's kind of that interesting feeling, but in that sensitive, watery, lunar place of Cancer.
Cardinal signs for that as well.
Yeah, hitting those cardinal signs. So
and water signs as well with Mars, because Mars is particularly, I guess, inflammatory sometimes. Although now that it will station direct February 23rd, and when it does that, it's almost like cleaning up rather than kind of maybe a breakdown with the retrograde. So I do look forward to that part of Mars direct.
The other thing, I think, when any planet is in Cancer is because it's ruled by the moon. The moon is traveling through all the other signs like 2.5 days, and then it moves on. So we get this ebb and flow of these emotions and the moon pulling us in different directions. So as the moon travels, your experience of the Mars retrograde can shift quite significantly as well, depending on where the moon is. So if you're finding that impacting you, if you've got cardinal placements, then by all means check where the moon is, because in a day or two it's going to change again, and you're going to be feeling something different. So it passes, as they say, and it passes quite quickly for planets.
Yeah, it does. And I find it interesting because Jupiter's the next one we'll talk about. Jupiter is stationing direct, by the way, but it's still going to move slow in Gemini. But I find it interesting that both Jupiter and Mars are being ruled by a planet that can move fast, and especially with Mercury, can change on a dime. So with Mars and Jupiter both being in signs that have planetary rules that move a lot, so I think things feel frenetic and maybe shifting a lot more with the fact that that's the case right now. So luckily though, Jupiter is moving slowly and direct February 4th. I'm excited.
Yeah, looking forward to that one. And then we've got Saturn, and Saturn is a slow mover. Saturn's out of its retrograde now, and it's beginning its move towards Aries. And that won't be until the spring, but it's starting to just begin that forward movement, covering new ground for us, really, where it's been moving forwards and retrograding back. We've been going over the same thing. Now we're going into new areas of Pisces, which is just that dreamy, ethereal, boundaryless place, and Saturn bringing some constrictions or limits, or bringing some form to it as well.
Absolutely. That's right. And the rest are considered outer planets because everything beyond Saturn, Saturn's the last planet we can see with the naked eye. So it makes a lot of sense that the rest would be considered outer. And Saturn is the boundary, right? So then we get to Uranus, which is really slow, not moving very much. It will pick up speed at the beginning of the year, though. But the beginning of the spring is what I meant, which is the beginning of the year for astrologers sometimes. So with Uranus, it's the change maker, and it's making change to 1 degree of your chart right now. As far as the nodes go, they're also moving quite slowly in Pisces and Virgo. North node at the very, very late degrees of Pisces. Neptune, Chiron also moving quite slowly. So I think, as far as the outer planets go, which does have a lot to do, and Pluto and Aquarius, with cultural concerns, I think. With the outer planets, you have lots of big macro events with them. And of course, that can filter down to your life. But I think with them all moving quite slowly right now, it's things like Mars and Venus and Mercury that are taking center stage. It's the inner planet.
I heard you were talking before about like the being no oppositions and the significance of that. Do you want to?
Yeah, there aren't any oppositions right now. And I find that there also are a lot of maybe more flowing things going on. Like Saturn is going to sextile Uranus, so you have these, and maybe not exactly, but close enough for the outer planets. Let me put it that way, because they don't get into this position very often. So yeah, no oppositions means that we have a whole area of the chart that's not being highlighted, pulled on. Change happens with oppositions, and change happens with squares, even though they're not exactly looked at as, I guess, sweet aspects. They are ones that cause movement. And so the flowing aspects that are actually happening, for instance, Saturn and Uranus are coming into at least pretty closer than they've been, sextile. And you have Pluto and Uranus will be in a trine later in the year. So it's starting to happen, and they're still in a sign-based square, but it's quite wide. So it's coming, the trine is. So I think that indicates maybe things locking into place in a good way. So we're almost there. It's like we're coming through the tumultuousness, but there is something to be said about signs that aren't being pulled on, and where you can maybe find solace or answers to questions, So something to think about.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, so this is the week, and these are the aspects we're going to be looking at for the 29th to the 5th of February. So Venus meeting Neptune in Pisces, and I always quite like this one. Venus is going to be at her exaltation degree as well, because she's exalted in Pisces. But there's always one degree where that exaltation really focuses in. An exaltation can mean just that expectation that people are going to bring things to you. You're an exalted guest and things are just delivered and laid before you. So you just got this vision of Venus kind of in her shell, just being head grapes and wine and all these beautiful things laid before her. And of course, Neptune is that spiritual planet. It can have quite a shadowy downside, but very transcendent and otherworldly. So maybe these Venusian gifts are, if you want to lean into that, that's really quite nice. And that's before her move to Aries and then her return in retrograde. Then we've got Venus entering Aries. So after kind of like this nice spa day that she's enjoying, she's got to get to work. And this is where Venus has to fight and work harder here. She's got to get creative with her solutions. Things aren't being brought to her here. She's having to work hard. And I think of those women warriors when I think of Venus in Aries. We'll talk more about that as we get to it. And then the one that we're all looking forward to, Jupiter stationing direct in Gemini, because of all this information and TikTok and things like that have happened, being banned in America. Whether we'll see a reversal of that possibly when Jupiter goes direct is possible. But again, we'll get to that. But how do you feel this week looks overall, Mandi?
I think it feels like things are shifting a little bit with the Jupiter station and Venus moving into Aries, but I am looking forward to the very first day of February with Venus Neptune. I think Neptune's so tricky. It can be magical, but it can be deceptive. So you have to be on your toes, but luckily Venus moving into Aries will get on its toes really quick. Yeah, I feel overall good about this first week. Overly, did you hear? I said overly good. That's Jupiter direct. Overly good about it.
Yeah, that's all the faith and hope that Jupiter's bringing in, and we're already starting to feel it.
And Venus, Neptune too here. Look at the moon there too. I just love this because that is, hopeful, I think, with Venus, Neptune. It is faith. And I think that's why Neptune can be deception, because it encourages you to have faith in things and to believe. And I always love to bring up the Christian concept of the Holy Spirit. And that's only because in, I guess, their doctrine or their belief system, there is the Bible, which is written by man. And then there's this fact that you can hear God, which is very much Neptune. It's not written. It's not anything that's, is carved in stone. It is just, it's dreams. It's the whispers of the muses, And so that's why I like to talk about it in this way. That's, if you are a creative, and you can be creative in anything you do, this is a very good day to do that, to kind of look to the muses and go, hello.
It really is. And it's interesting that it's there with the North Node. So there's a note of caution there. So this is all happening on the 1st of February. I don't know, is it our first taste of the North Node in Pisces? Because we're coming up to eclipses next month. But to have this conjunction right with the North Node. And the North Node can indicate increase, but can also get us wanting things that they're going to be good for us in the moment, but maybe not good for us in the long term. But they are, it's said, Abby Mashar said they're good with a good one. And of course we've got Neptune and Venus there. So that's giving this benefic slant. So maybe it is more good. So that's maybe the things that we want maybe have a higher spiritual reach, maybe where it's not material things that you're aspiring to. You're aspiring to help the collective or reach out and make a difference in the world or something.
I think their ideas can come in here and then it's so funny to know that there will be the retrograde process of Venus and it will come back to these degrees. So here I could see this even being like the spark, and then the retrograde being how do I figure out how to do this, how to bring this into my life. I had this great idea, I have this maybe even spiritual, conquest, whatever it is. It's how do I get it done? So this day is pay attention for sure.
Yeah, and with the moon there as well, bringing like possibly that nurturing feminine insight, that dreamy quality of it, or the instinct and the imagination and the ability to tap into intuition, as well as just heightened that with Neptune and the moon so close together. I always talk about creating a healthy container, so it's quite nice if you can do something that's linked to water and your intuition, if you're wanting to meditate near water or even in the bath or something like that. That would be a great time for getting some real insights. If you mentioned before you meditate, it's something you want to understand, maybe. Emotion quality. Or if you're a musician, or, if you're somebody who is an artist or a creative, you can really get some significant inspiration, I feel, on this day.
And one last thing I'll say is that Mercury and Jupiter are applying to a trine. So Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces. And so to have Mercury, which is ruling Jupiter, trining Jupiter, ruling this Venus-Neptune conjunction feels fortunate.
Yeah. And then we've got this sextile as well to Uranus.
Mm-hmm.
Venus is signed, so it's kind of bringing in, I don't remember what you called him.
The change maker.
Yeah. I call him like an awakener. Again, like awakening you to a new insight. So there's that potential where he's in Venus's temple doing that kind of work, and linked in as well with the moons flowing forth from him, but carrying those insights into the conjunction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this day is probably one of my favorites of February already, and we just started out, so.
Yeah, we're hitting the ground running, aren't we? It's really nice. Yeah, I had an archetype here that came from the Archetypal Explorer book, was like sacred love, or love as a mystical force. And that love without boundaries as well, like without conditions, unconditional love. You get with Venus in Pisces, but also Venus meeting Neptune. Neptune is known as a dissolver. It doesn't have boundaries. So it is just pure love, that essence that comes through. Mm-hmm. It's also that potential Venus representing love in all its forms. Here it just feels like the element of purity, but also the warning of Neptune and having that potential shadow side of potential for illusions and delusions and the rose-tinted glasses. So make sure that if you're feeling that love, that it's well placed. I always say that's the way to judge that best, is to lean into what people around you are telling you. And if everybody's saying the same thing, even if you don't feel that, it's sometimes wise to listen in. If they're trusted sources that you can trust from before, and they're all singing from the same song sheet, you think of these people who've been scammed with these catfishers or whatever, and it's that illusion that lady who thought she was helping Brad Pitt by sending him money. It's kind of that thing that she was so intense in that story that even though everybody around her was telling her Brad Pitt is not communicating with you online and asking you to help him with money, he so wanted to believe it, and so she started hiding it from her. And I think that's where the illusions come in, and you want to believe it so much that you start deluding even yourself. Oh, I had some dates. So they're meeting now on February the 1st in conjunction, and they'll meet again because of the retrograde on March 27th at 29 degrees. Is that right? They'll meet in...
Yep. Anoretic. The moon will be there again.
Moon's there as well. Lovely. So it's like a replay, but maybe a bit more tense.
Absolutely. And Mars is direct at 22. So it's very, very similar. That's really cool. Except Mercury is with an Aries retrograde. So that's the biggest difference. And then again, May 2nd in Aries.
Conjunction in Aries at 1 degree. I mean, these usually meet maybe once a year. Venus's cycle around the zodiac, but because of the retrograde going around and across where Neptune is, they're meeting that 3 times. So it's like that 3 coats of paint, lean into what you're going to learn from her and from them together. And then what happens to Venus?
It moves into Aries. And And with that being said, Mars being the ruler of Aries is probably one of the things I'm tuned into most about this ingress, because Mars is in Cancer. And to me, Venus being a warrior in Aries, looking to what Mars is needing help with almost, even though they're square by sign, they're not square exactly. It's just that's the ruler. So it seems more emotional, like I'm going to fight for my family kind of thing, or I'm going to fight for my needs. And that's very important. The moon being in Taurus during this is, that's where the moon is exalted, first of all. And also Venus is home sign. So you have this interplay between Venus, moon, and Mars that I think screams like values, and my needs are important, my family's important, and whatever you consider family. But Cancer is such a familial sign, so there is a specific thing I think that comes through with the ingress of Venus into Aries. It does draw my attention to my values, my needs, and I'm going to pay attention to my circle almost. It's a very personal sign.
Yeah. I always think of Aries as like a rebirth, where Pisces is the last sign where you kind of dissolved into the collective of everybody and kind of lost yourself a little bit. And then Aries is like really finding out who you are, a real focus on individuation. And also being the first sign of the zodiac, it's symbolically the light returning. We lost the light during the winter months. And Maddie said earlier, this is like when the sun reaches here, it's not quite there yet, still in Aquarius in exile, but it will get to Aries. And when it does, that's like the astrological new year. And it like symbolizes that return of the light, that the battle against the darkness has been won and the light returning. So for Venus now, she's sort of leading this battle, like those soldiers that go ahead. There's a word for it, isn't it, that I can't think of, but they're kind of like staking out the territory beforehand and maybe sending information back. And it's like in the way that she's fighting, she's kind of preparing the ground for the sun.
Yeah. And Mars is still retrograde. So it does give the notion that maybe you get into it, but you have to kind of reevaluate, like Venus goes into the battlefield and sees everything, but Mars is like, I'm not sure if I'm retreating or not. What am I doing? So it's like, well, let me just check it out, like you said, and take it back to Pisces, and where they will be in a trine. I don't know if they do exact trine from Pisces to Cancer, but there's this sense that Venus is helping Mars, which doesn't happen very often. It does happen, but I like that.
Yeah.
But it's like, don't do too much in the very beginning, because there may be a little bit of, fervor, because Mars is slow. Mars is loud right now, and it's whiny, and so Venus is like, what do I need to do for you? Don't, it's like maybe watch the acting too fast, especially acting on emotions. I'm not saying don't, because maybe that's what you need to do, but there is a sense that you could go overboard in that way. And, Jupiter is also being loud, and there is a lot of this profuse in my feelings, I'm going to speak about it situation going on.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking a lot about this cusp between Pisces and Aries this year, going forward.
Right.
I think we've said already, but just to reiterate the point that both she and Mercury and then Neptune and then Saturn are all going to pass over this and make this ingress and then retrograde back. So it's like this is going to be a collective experience as well, with Neptune that represents generations and the collective, Saturn representing the older people, Venus representing women and the feminine rights and issues. So all of these things are coming up, and like you say, with Mars having that final say and then Jupiter ruling Pisces, so that flip-flopping between the two, maybe trying one, going back to the other, and trying to get it right, I suppose. Who are they when they decide to go forwards in Aries? Who are we all going to be when those planets start to move forward in Aries? Things could look quite different because of this little line here, this ingress being so important, quite significant. And of course, poor Venus being in exile here. And it is a place of like pioneering and signified by the Ran, who just like head down and my way through. I'm just going to go for this. So it does make me wonder, like with women's rights and everything. I know particularly in America with the election and what might come forward from that. As Trump takes over the presidency and starts issuing orders and making laws, the fight back that might follow. It makes me think of that article that came out as well about the Celtic queens and women that came out very, very recently. But it was looking at the Iron Age society, and it said that men travelled to marry women, and so women stayed in the place. They could tell from the DNA that it was women who owned the land, and the men would marry into it, and like a different matriarchal kind of society, and it brought another level of respect in. It just felt Venus in Aries. But you also see like the African warrior queens, that they were equal in full and with fighting skills and everything. It's that equality as well, the genders and the respect for the genders that somehow got lost. I think these days, the yin and yang, it has to be perfectly in balance, doesn't it? And somehow it feels out of balance now. Maybe it's time to get that corrected.
Well, we could hope.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I also see Venus sextiling Pluto on the ingress.
Yeah, very much empowerment. It's funny, I kind of look at Venus right now as an evening star, but it's about to go into after the retrograde and Venus star point with the Venus Sun Cazimi. It will be a morning star, and that's, Lucifer traditionally. Yeah, I mean, Venus is deciding right here, I might be in my Lucifer era. Let me just go back and be a morning star.
Yeah. It's like the dark feminine.
Yeah. Yeah, that is
deep undercurrents of our ancestors and in our DNA.
Evening star, I believe, is spoils of war. Morning star is the warrior.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
So we'll talk more about it too, because, on our subsequent weeks, we're sliding into it.
Yeah, I mean, she's co-present with Chiron as well, which is going to activate those winds of self. And even for us all on individual levels like that sextile with Pluto, it's of the nature of Venus, a sextile, so it's going to be helpful and bring opportunities, but it can also reveal the shadow side. And maybe the dark feminine within us all, whether you're male, female, or any other gender that anybody can choose to be, because there are more than two. Whatever, like that thing of you can choose your own opinions, but you can't choose your own facts. And gender and sex, I believe at least, are two different things. I feel like whatever comes up for you, it's worth looking straight in the eye. Like Venus is going to give you that strength and that power, and that will help you find yourself and help you with this stage. And the retrograde as well is all about things like that real finding yourself and who are you now, and what do you fight for, and where are you needed in the battle. But also Aries, as we say, is cardinal signs, so it's going to affect all of the cardinal signs, so that's square to Mars in Cancer, but also Libras and Capricorns. So that's Saturn rule sign as well. So it's interesting how they all grow together. Then we get to the 4th.
This is Jupiter direct. This is something I've been looking forward to because I'm in a Jupiter perfection year. So, by the way, if you are familiar with perfection years, any planet that we're talking about, if it's your Time Lord, it's something to note. So Jupiter direct, any planet direct is extremely loud. And I believe Rick Levine says that a lot. And I agree, it is. It's just sitting there, making a point. So especially if you have anything around 11 degrees, and I'd give it a degree on either side of Gemini, this is where Jupiter's going direct. And the thing is, this is also right at the Venus ingress. So, I mean, it's just right after that. And I think that's going to make for a big time all around. So I think one of the things to note is that Mercury is ruling Jupiter. Jupiter is abundance. Jupiter is the largest planet. It expands everything. So when it's in Gemini, that's communication, that is data processing, it is the internet, it is anything technology. And that's what Mercury rules as well. So commerce is also a thing with Mercury. And I think commerce is really a big topic right now in America, especially with the new administration. I'll say that. And Jupiter at this time is just past exact trine to Mercury. And Mercury is going to go Cazimi soon after this. So there is a lot happening and a lot of information on this day. And so it's one of those things, especially with Venus moving into Aries right at this moment, that you might say it could be overwhelming, I think, and people will be acting on this information. So even though Mars is retrograde and the action tends to slow down, I'm just not so sure that this won't be a super active day, whether or not Mars is retrograde or not. It doesn't matter. Do I think it's negative? Not necessarily. Jupiter is a benefic planet. So I think that there could be pluses and minuses to this moment, because I don't think Mars retrograde, it seems like something is still undercover. I'll put it that way. There's just something we're not sure about, but pretty overwhelming day of data processing for your brain. I think it's good to maybe go into the Taurus moon at this time and kind of, comfort yourself, get you a nice warm fuzzy blanket and maybe doom scroll.
Yeah, I love that overload of information is intense, isn't it? Jupiter will enter Cancer on June the 9th.
Yeah, so it goes fast from here. It starts slow, but eventually it will move into Cancer in just a few months from this. So
it's been retrograde since October the 9th. So we've had that all through the Christmas and New Year period, this retrograde energy. And I think it was Chris Brennan and Austin Coppock were talking about like the day of the station or the days around the station. Quite often you see the most intense significations. I don't know if that's similar to what you were saying, Rick Cavini was saying, but what the Jupiter direct means, everything.
Yeah.
Jupiter in Gemini. So
yeah,
full stories. I quite often just like look at the news just to see. I don't like to go too deeply into it because it always healthy, but just to see what stories relate to this information coming through and this influx. But also being a benefic, sometimes it can be expansion for good or bad. It's like expansion of your waistline or a tumor or something. You don't always want everything to grow. You need some sort of checks and balances, and it just feels like it's going to just go and grow now. Those setbacks of the retrograde, it's good to go now.
Thank goodness.
It is in its fall in Gemini as well, meaning that it can struggle to realize its deeper purpose, and it sometimes needs to call on its friends. So, like you said, that trying to, and also in Aquarius being sort of like the air sign, it just brings that extra like oversight of the big picture in as well. That Jupiter there is down in the details and ins and outs and the curiosity of everything, but Mercury there has got an oversight of where are we taking this, what's going on, how, and just that also as a way to like innovate and take it forward somehow. What are we going to do with all this? Where is it leading us? We can't just be overwhelmed with information for its own sake, but maybe we can use this and harness it to greater good.
Yeah, and the Sabian symbol mentions things like rising above conditions and limitations, standing up for yourself, demanding better treatment, not being afraid to ask things or speak your mind. There's many people who've written on the Sabian symbols, but I like to just say this is the theme here with this degree according to Dane Rudyard. So, which I think is apropos, especially with Mercury and Aquarius.
Yeah, this transit is, as well, I was just thinking, this Jupiter has like a 12-year cycle around the zodiac. So you can also think back 12 years to what was going on for you then with regards to information and those kind of themes. And of course, we're in a different place with regard to technology then, like significantly different. You can see how it's grown and realign with your own intentions as well. That's kind of how to harness the magic of it. What do you want to grow in terms of the data and the way you use it? That can be quite helpful. I always talk about the healthy container for things. And I think once you're clear on your own intentions, that really helps. So I think that first week in February is going to be busy for me, I think.
Sure, yeah.
Getting myself set and sorted. Jupiter's in a sign for about a year. So when it reaches Cancer, it's going to be in its exaltation. So it's going to feel quite different.
I think that covers it. Those are, this date, February 1st through 4th, these are the big ones.
Yeah, they are. It's kind of, the month starts with a bang, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. It sure does. It sure does.
Okay, well, that concludes this first week of February. And Mandi and I will be back next week for the 5th to the 12th. And if you've enjoyed this, if you found any of the information helpful, if it's helped you with your own astrology, we'd really love to hear your comments and your reflections. And please remember to like, subscribe. It really helps us as a small channel for us to grow Astrology Kairos. So thank you and welcome Mandi to Astrology Kairos. You can find Mandi at ecstaticastrology.com and you can find me at celestiaastrology.com, and at Astrology Kairos is where you can find our collective. Thank you for listening. Bye.